appear to have at least a quorum of the master plan working group present, so we can formally call the meeting to order. Begin with a roll call of all the members. Fiona, you probably have a better list than I do of who's here. So if you would call the roll for us.
Sure, absolutely. Let me just get in. Where am I navigating myself here? Okay, so all right, John Allen, Guru, Andrea, sorry,
Present.
Julie Capuzziello.
I'm here.
Okay, Bob Carroll, Doreen DeFazio,
DeFazio here.
Victoria Duckworth,
Present.
Susan Duvall,
Here.
Lindsay Fox,
Here.
Anne-Marie Foley, Shiva Ganti, Deborah George, Julie Grace,
Here.
Linda Hassinger.
Here.
As I say, I know you're here, Linda. Justin Hollander,
Here.
Chantel Kimball,
Here.
Jennifer Lewis. Okay, Hamam Pasala, Essek Petrie,
Here.
Dave Robbins, obviously,
Here.
Sue Robbins,
Here.
Colleen Roy,
Here.
Bruce Spinney, and Roshan Utangi. And that is everyone.
You didn't say my name.
I'm sorry. Okay, just kidding. Brian Cool, sorry.
Thank you.
And JT Ross.
Present.
Okay, that is officially everybody. Sorry about that.
Very good. Now that we've confirmed the attendance of everybody who's here, the next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of our previous meeting. That is the August 7th meeting. We don't actually have minutes available for that meeting, so we will defer approval of those meetings to a future meeting, probably November, since October's meeting is going to be the workshop. So we'll dispense with that agenda item easily enough, and then we'll move on to the discussion items on the agenda, the first of which is the vision statement. And most of the rest of the agenda will be basically led by the folks from CMRPC, who are really at this point organizing a lot of this. So moving on, vision statement. What do we have on that?
Thank you, Dave. So I think the most efficient thing for today's discussion would be to roll the discussion on the vision statement into our discussion of the activities for visioning for the workshop.
That works.
So if that works for everyone, we can start with going through workshop promotion, tasks, and move on to specific discussion about table activities, including visioning.
Without objection, let's proceed that direction.
So with that, I will hand this over to my colleague, Sarah, who can start us on promotion discussions.
Sarah, just before you hop in, and I'm sorry this will be the only time I interrupt, but I just wanted to make a note that our new recreation director, Adam, is on the call. Adam has so kindly agreed to join us at our master plan workshop to talk about all things, recreation. So I just wanted to acknowledge that Adam's here and thank him for coming, and we look forward to working with you on this. So any questions, just chime right in. But all right, I am going to stop interrupting.
Thanks. Welcome, Adam. So glad you're here. it'll be awesome to have you. And there is one of our first things on this promotion is, as many people from Grafton we could have come to this workshop, the better. So we're happy to have, if there's anybody in mind, anyone on the committee that thinks, oh, this person, whatever department head, board member, committee member should really be at this table, we're trying to get as many people here as possible. So I'll dial it back a little for anybody who wasn't at the last workshop, a brief summary of what we're doing. A month from tomorrow, October 19th, 6 to 8, at the Grafton High School Commons will be our second workshop for the Grafton Master Plan. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be an excellent night. It's going to play off of everything we've collected from the survey, from the data, from the farmers market, from the first workshop, and we'll have a bunch of tables out. Now, if you've ever been to a science fair or a charrette, very interactive data, maps, charts for all of the topics that are going to be covered in the master plan. There will be representatives from CMRPC and the working group at all of these tables, really getting more deep into the topics that we've started talking about with the public to really shape the chapters as we go into plan development. So tonight we want to really nail down how we're going to promote this. I think having a committee this big is a huge opportunity to get a lot of people at this workshop. Our goal is 150, which seems like a lot, but if you divide it by 26, everybody just has to bring like 5 or 6 people and we'll make it. That could be like your immediate family or people you see at the store. So I think we could do it. I think we could do even more than 150, but I wanted to nail down who's doing what, especially the downsides with the committee this big. Have some kind of order of who can do which promotional activities we're looking for. And if you've had time to think about this since the last meeting, if there's any other methods we could use to get the word out in Grafton, we could touch on those too. So I'll run down this list. And as I'm going through, feel free to shout out if you think you're the right person for this task or if that's something you could take on in the next month. So Fiona has formally invited all the department heads. Is there anything else to be done with that, Fiona? We're all set.
So I'm still working on it. I'm just going to keep nudging everyone as I do. But we, Adam will be joining us, of course, and then we, the library director, and I'm still working on logistics with a couple of other folks. But yeah, we're making progress, and I'll make sure to send you an update. I think it's that with town meeting and everything, people are still working out their schedules. But yeah, no, so far so good, and I'll keep you posted.
Fantastic, thank you. Another one we have is inviting the boards and committees in Grafton. So I have some select ones here, but some space below for ones I don't have. Who can invite the planning board?
Fiona might have a connection to the planning board,
Fiona, don't sign up for all these though.
among others of us.
That's true. Planning board I could definitely take on. And I also, Sarah, I will say that I do have access to we did recently switch email servers, which has been that transition has been a little bit wonky at first, but I think that it's fine now. And we do have an email blast that goes out to all volunteers for municipal boards and committees. So honestly, I can take this one.
Okay.
And it's just easier that way because I have everyone's recent contact info. So I'll do that.
Cool. So it'd be great if we could email all the boards and committees, but also have an in-person invitation from people in the working group, a little double.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone that could invite the select board, if you're on the select board, I don't think, or if you're planning on going to a select board meeting. Colleen? Thank you. School committee?
I can do school committee.
Thank you, Sue. Rec.
Sarah, I can take that.
Thank
for
you,
high
Adam.
students.
Excellent. John Allen's not here, but anybody who can, maybe we could just give this to John, or is anybody else on the, I think it's Economic Development Committee?
There's nothing
Yeah.
else, assign it to John.
Cool. We will
Got
voluntold John. Let him know. I'm sure he's already on that. Any other board? Oh, yes, Linda?
What about the zoning board of appeals?
Sure.
I mean, that's really an important board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
can
think,
change CBA, Sarah.
okay.
Great.
They're actually meeting on Thursday, if anybody was planning on going to that.
The finance committee is meeting both Wednesday and Thursday to go over the warrant hearing articles for fall town meeting. And I'm happy to speak to the group meeting on both of those days.
Fantastic. Thank you, Victoria. Other boards, committees? Doreen?
The Affordable Housing Trust, they're not part of a committee, so to speak, since they're a trust, but I think they should get an invitation. I'm happy to take that on.
Thank you.
Another group, the library trustees.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's group that I don't even know when they meet anymore. I don't know anybody who's on it.
I could reach out to Doug Bowman.
Okay.
I can do that.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks. That's Julie Grace. There's two Julies.
Nice catch.
Sorry, just.
Anything else before we move on? Cool.
Sarah, I just wanted to make a point to say that for Colleen and Doreen's assignments specifically, we do also have Anne Marie Foley is on the select board. So I'll nudge her personally as well. And Bruce Spinney is on the Housing Trust, who's also a working group member. So I think, you know, having Colleen and Doreen's help will be good, but I'll also put a bug in their ear. Bruce's and Anne's.
We're hoping by the time we're done with promotions, everyone will be annoyed with how much they heard about this. Not the opposite. I didn't hear about it. It's going to be, nobody can stop talking about this. And just as a note, before I move on, in the Dropbox that Fiona has been sending you, are all of the promotional materials that CMRPC made. So we have a flyer, we have a half sheet if you want to print them out and cut them in half just to hand out at meetings. We have the press release and a link to the Facebook event to invite people there. Right on it. Thank you, Fiona. Cool. So move on to media. CMRPC sent the press release to the Telegram and the Grafton News. Any other local newspapers we should send out to? Just thinking, I don't know if
Possibly the Community Advocate, they reach Grafton a bit. And I want to say it's the Blackstone Valley Express, maybe it's more of an advertising paper, but they do have articles that are related to Grafton. I think it's distributed, I don't remember, seems like every week or every month, something like that. Blackstone Valley Express, is it?
thank you.
And the Community Advocate, I think they're more centered around Westboro, Southboro, and some of those towns, but they do carry some news about Grafton occasionally.
Yeah, we'll take it. Do you have a contact at either of those, or I could just send to the general email?
Yeah, I don't know any contacts there.
Right.
There used to be, and this is ancient history now, the Blackstone Valley Tribune used to be one of the newspapers we'd put out a lot of publicity in, but that's no longer exists. And I knew the guy I knew who the contact was back then, but it's of no use now.
Okay, this is helpful though. Thank you, Dave. Anyone that would like to do a little TV spotlight on GCTV? Fiona set the bar high last phase.
I find that I'm just, because I like to sign myself up for everything. I am happy to do it again, but I'm sure that there's somebody else that is way more photogenic than I, but if not, then I can easily do that, Sarah. I have a good relationship with GCTV, and it's,
Great.
you know, they kind of know the drill from the first time, so.
If there is one possible contact for the Blackstone Valley Express and all of those newspapers, Small Stones has someone who is their publicist, and she is a library trustee, Bob tells me. And we could try reaching out to her and seeing if she can give us any contacts with some of the local newspapers. She knows literally everything contacting in this area. Small Stones contacts everyone. And
That'd be good.
yeah, you know, one of us will try and email her and give a talk to. Unfortunately, she has COVID,
Okay.
so you know she's not feeling absolutely 100%. But I think she'll communicate by email. Okay.
And she's always flat out.
Yeah.
Always doing.
One of those people that says yes to everything. So you know, she's 20 hours a day. You know, she just never rests. But we'll reach out to her, and she knows most of the local news rags. Okay.
If she can point us to the right people, that would be great.
Yeah, and that's all I'll ask for from her. She's just simply too busy to do anything else. But if she can give me some names and you know some way to get something sent to her, we'll see what somebody can write up. I could try write up something, but I'll talk to, at least once I find out that information, I'll get back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Linda. For the Grafton website, we have a little event blurb. I'm wondering if it's possible to get on the calendar part too. I'm thinking about everybody who's going to be going to see the town meeting information.
Yes, yep, Sarah, is it on up there?
It's an event in like if you scroll down in news and events, but the last time I checked, it was not on the calendar portion, the town. calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. I will do that. Sorry.
Thank you. Newsletters. The two we know about are the
mentioned
Senior
that.
Center newsletter and Rec newsletter. I'm not sure if we've missed the train on getting them into newsletters before next month. Does anybody have a contact for the Senior Center newsletter?
I can mention it to somebody I know and that has direct contact with them. So if you want to put my name down, it's fine.
Thank you. How about the Rec newsletter? Adam, do you have a idea?
Yeah, we send all electronically through our email database, so I can send it tomorrow. So I'll get on that. That's fine.
Fantastic. Love it. Thank you.
Are we also going to have a table or something set up at town meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
Any other newsletters that go out with committees or even informal news blasts people know about? Anyone with a bunch of emails?
I mean, could we contact the DTC and RTC in town? I mean, they're little groups that are really active in town that could have their own little email blasts.
Sound like the kind of people who would come to an event like this. I love it. Do you have a contact for those or anybody else familiar?
Yes, I have a contact for the DTC. I could probably track down a contact for the RTC on social media.
Great. Thank you.
I can do the RTC. This is Julie Cap. I'll contact the head person there.
Awesome.
It's Stacy.
Thank you. Very helpful.
And Sarah,
Yep.
this is JT. I live on Appaloosa Drive in North Grafton, and we have a community email chain that has all 100 or so odd households on it. So I'd be happy to take whatever communication the group puts together and share it with that group. They're pretty engaged.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I'll just call that North Grafton Blast. Thank you.
We have the same thing over here off of Colette Street. I can do the same as North Grafton, but a different area.
Awesome.
I imagine there are probably several of those, and if we could tap into those, I don't think 150 is going to be a tough number.
Yeah, I think there are, and I don't know very many of them, but Yeah, I am aware that there are any number of sort of neighborhood groups either on Facebook or what's the other? There's another Nextdoor, I think, is another sort of neighborhood group thing. That the trouble is, most of us don't know specifically who those groups are, but they're probably more than we're aware of. But reaching out to folks in different neighborhoods who might be on these either Facebook groups or email blasts would be great, but it's hard to, like I said, it seems like it's hard to find them, but to the extent that we can find them, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Anybody know?
Yeah,
of a
I agree,
South
Dave.
Grafton neighborhood one? I'm sorry, JP.
No, that's okay, sir. I think you made the point earlier that this is a very large committee, which is going to work to our advantage in this case, right? We probably have most geographies in town covered. So if the individuals that live in each part of town, all 3 zips, can kind of tap into those respective networks, to Dave's point, we'll probably touch most of the town through those.
Does anyone know of a South?
My brother's
Grafton
about to move to
house?
South Grafton, but he's not there yet, so I can't quite take advantage of it, but he's about to be there. I do actually, through the Town Little League, our league president, or one of the league presidents, Mike Demers, lives in South Grafton. I'll reach out to him and see if there's something that he can engage with in the south part of the town.
Perfect. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in South, and I am part of a Nextdoor group. I can certainly share it there. I don't use that myself much, but it can't hurt to get the word out. So
excellent. Thank you.
When you reach out, maybe to all those local groups, maybe ask them to pass it on to other groups that they know about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point.
Do we have a, can I just jump in here for a second? This is Brian. Do we have any graphics made up or anything like a poster that we could, electronic poster use?
Yeah, so I think it's in the chat now. The Dropbox link has a flyer and a half sheet that have more information on them. And then the link to the Facebook event, which is posted on the Grafton Master Plan Facebook page. And that has its own description that you could send to people as well.
Thanks.
Or you could just tell people to go to graftonmasterplan.com. That also has everything on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Cool. So social media, we did start talking about Facebook pages last time. We have Grafton Informed, All Things Grafton, Grafton Rise, Grafton Group, Grafton Moms and Dads. Chantel and Anne, I don't know if Anne's here today. Are you still good to share to some Facebook pages?
Yep, I actually just pulled the event up so that I can do it as soon as we're done here with a little blurb.
Excellent. Yeah. And if anyone knows of any other pages, of course, this doesn't have to be a comprehensive list. Cool. And on our side, we turned the Facebook event into an ad. So it will be promoted to people in Grafton for the next month. And we'll be sending an email to everyone that took the survey and went to the first workshop or has visited the website as they have, I believe they have an introduction, but they'll get a follow-up email as well. Great. And some traditional styles of promotion. Does Grafton do electronic message boards? Does anyone know a lead of how we could look into that?
Yes, we do. They use them as you come up the hill where 140 and 122 split. They often put events up on an electronic board there. You have to, I don't know exactly who you talk to in town hall, but I know Apple Tree's been on there and various, the election, various things. So there is some method of doing that, but I don't know how you get to that method.
I'm pretty sure it's the DPW that owns and operates that message board. In addition, we can reach out to some businesses in town that have electronic signs.
I believe the insurance company, they're up at 140, 122.
Yeah, Gaudet is one that frequently puts messages, public service messages out there. The credit union might be willing to put something on their side, their board. Those are the two that I can think of off the top of my head that have visibility, and I think have previously done public service announcements. There may be others that I can't think of offhand, but those two come to mind.
Dave, it's the credit union, and what was the other business?
Gaudet Insurance.
Okay, Sarah, I'll take that.
Thank you. Anyone interested in looking into the town's message board?
The only thing about the town message board is that the fact that it's that DPW style, I imagine it'll be advertising for town meeting. It might be competing because they're so close in dates.
Yeah. We have like a 2-day window. It might be confusing.
But even 2 days, anything going up, we can certainly talk to them and see if they'll just change the board after town meeting and put it up.
Yeah, and it might be, they might be willing to put that up for the workshop prior to the time they put out the notice about town meeting. So they may be able to mix and match somehow, share the time. I'm not sure exactly what the plans are for putting up the town meeting announcement on that board, but if prior to the time town meeting announcement goes up, there perhaps could be an opportunity to announce the workshop, sort of plan ahead thing. But then after town meeting, of course, they could switch it over to the workshop message.
David, you be able to take lead on this?
Yeah, I can talk to probably talk to Evan or Paul.
Great, thank you. And Brian, I have you down for bringing flyers to businesses. Did you have places in mind? I'm wondering if you wanted to do all these locations, or if we could get more names on specific businesses or places that would get high traffic.
Yeah, you can just, as long as I have a list, I'll go there.
John Allen has a list, and also we can just put his name down. He's doing this anyway, so he's driving around to the businesses, so he'll be able to help to divide and conquer. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, you can share it if he wants to do that.
Yeah.
And Sarah, you don't have to put me on here, but I can set. We have like sandwich boards at all of our playgrounds and parks in town, so I can just do those anyways. So it's an easy ride around town, so no problem.
Thank you. These two were topics that were brought up last meeting. I didn't want to leave them hanging. If anyone has a contact with Native American populations or wants to look into this further to make sure that they're invited.
I can take that.
Well, thank you. And South Grafton PTO, or PTO is maybe an example. But anything other than the neighborhood board that we can think of to invite South Grafton specifically?
So they have a big Oktoberfest coming up on October 14th that they're pushing out. Like, I've received so many flyers for this event already through my children. I'm not involved in the PTO or really have a contact over there, but Oktoberfest is gonna be a big thing if we could have something there for that. Similar to maybe the Grafton Farmers Market, but I don't know if there's availability to set up anything like that.
That'd be fantastic if somebody can go with little half sheets and hand them out.
And to piggyback on that, Sarah, too, so the 15th, the rec department does doing their scarecrow decorating and pumpkin painting, which is a big fall event for us. I can't commit myself to being at the table because we're going to be probably running around crazy, but if anybody's available, we can definitely give you space for a table.
Great.
We can make a master plan scarecrow.
Hey, there you go.
It'll be a big zoning map. Very fun. Anybody already planning on going to the Scarecrow Fest or the Oktoberfest that's comfortable handing out flyers?
I am, sorry, let me just make sure that I don't put actually, no, I'm sorry. I cannot make it that day. I thought I would be available. Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's the 15th. That's
Yes.
Sunday? Okay, yeah, no, sorry, I can't.
Going once, going twice.
We'll circle back to that one, Sarah. I might move things around.
And worst case, I can just keep the table, just put, flyers and try my best to bounce between. But again, I just don't want to say, yeah, I can do it. And then somebody scarecrows fall over and things happen, as we all know with events. So,
Okay, where is that event? Is it on the common?
it is on the common. Yep.
I'll try and get somebody. It'll either be me or it'll be my son or somebody like that that'll cover it. We can sit there and do that. That's fine. I'm not going to go to the Oktoberfest because it's really not my thing. But I can sit at the table and talk to people and kind of get them to do things at the Scarecrow. Okay.
Thank you so much. And we could highlight this and perhaps highlight it in the follow-up email to the committee members that weren't here today. Maybe we have some more bites. Great. Any other promotion methods we can shoot out here?
Sarah, I would go back to JT again. I would go back to Brian and John have a lot on their plate with everything that they're going to be going after there up above. In terms of the local cafe, brewery, etc. scene, I think it makes a ton of sense for us to very specifically target the Shanty, the new opening at Cold Harbor, which is drawing a lot of North Grafton residents, and a few other spots that are like high traffic congregation areas. So I'd be happy to kind of assist with some of that. I have relationships with folks that own and operate those spots. So I think those are places that we should be pursuing, because, if we're trying to promote our brand as a master planning group, we need to go after locations that have, from a biased perspective, parents of young children, because they're going to have a vested interest in the success of this and they're more likely to show up. So I think that would make a lot of sense to pursue places like that. And that's just two. But I mean, I think that extends to Highfields. I think that extends to the Tavern. I think that extends to a lot of the spots down on 122 and 140. So I'm happy to pursue some of that with just appropriate direction from the group.
Great. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, absolutely agree. Thank you, JT. Cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
Doreen.
JT, you and I can touch base as well. Maybe I'll set up like a call between you, myself, John, and Brian, and we can talk about that. It's a good idea.
Agreed. Yep. Divide and conquer, and let's kind of amplify our efforts here, right? So go where the people are and go where the likely contributors are going to be spending their time. And if we do that, there's only so many of us, even though there's a lot. If we multiply our efforts, we'll be far more likely to find success.
Awesome.
I see Doreen has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple other ideas that may or may not work. One, for Colleen and I, who will be working a table with materials at town meeting, as you all know, I was wondering, and I can't remember for the life of me whether we still bother to print out packets of the warrant articles at town meeting, or we just check people in. But regardless, I don't know if it makes sense to have flyers as people check in as registered voters, hand it to them and say, there's a table with more material and any questions you may have about the master plan at this table over here. So at least we know that we have sort of a save the date for people or some kind of flyer, and we know that we are telling every single person walking into town meeting and not just relying on them. I mean, not that Colleen and I won't do an excellent job trying to flag down every single person to talk about the master plan workshop, but I just think it'll speak to the importance of it as people check into town meeting. The second thing,
we should be able to do that.
Okay.
Right. We typically have, if nothing else, copies of the warrant to hand out to people as they come in. And it's not uncommon for us to have additional material that we hand out to every town meeting attendee as they check in. So,
Great.
yeah.
And I'm happy to help with that too. I'm happy to attach them to the warrant handout. So it's just part of the package that volunteers hand out, whatever everybody thinks. But I just think there's an opportunity there. The other thing that I could go either way is we have Code Red, which is used for emergency purposes in town. Now, the town, generally speaking, has never abused Code Red, and I'm not saying that the master plan announcement would, but we have used it of trash is delayed a day or something like that, something non-emergency. So if the committee and the town administrator agreed that this would be a way to maybe blast a text out to residents, master plan workshop happening on this day, participation needed, it may be a good idea. Like I said, I could go either way on this. It's a sort of a fine line between being used for emergency purposes or not. Some people have different opinions on that. But like I said, the Grafton isn't abusers of it. And I personally think it would be appropriate and a good reminder for particularly busy folks who are running around, and just to get a text on my phone of things is sometimes extremely helpful. So those are my two.
Yeah. Yeah, it's worth touching base with Evan on that, and suggesting that it might be possible. Code Red, will send out phone calls, text messages, and emails.
Mm-hmm.
And we might want to, we can talk about this with Evan and see. I think he's kind of the one who's in charge of that, but see what they think might be appropriate.
Okay, and I'm happy to make that call to Evan too, and loop back with Fiona on his response. And Fiona, you can let the committee know, obviously, if anyone has opinions now, that's fine too, but I'm happy to give Evan a call tomorrow and check in.
Yep, and I see Sue has her hand up.
I just wanted to comment on one of the things Doreen has suggested. If you take a flyer and ask William to attach it to the warrant articles in the back, he can do that all at once while they're running them off before town meeting.
That's brilliant, Sue. Thank you.
Yes, I can. I'll coordinate with William about the packets, and I will also ask Evan, Doreen, and yeah, that sounds great. These are awesome suggestions. Thanks so much.
Okay, so you, Fiona, just to be clear, you're going to check in with Evan instead of me?
Yeah, I'll do
Okay.
it. I know
Okay.
you're busy, and I'm in his office once a day.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. And this Google Sheet everyone can edit it. It's on the Dropbox. So if you think of anything else, obviously you could just do whatever feels right. But if you want to look at this list to remember what you signed up for, it is here. We have a few more things just to touch upon the day of. So to give you a sense of day of, Elena and I will probably be there before 5, but we will be bringing about 20 people from CMRPC to assist with this event. So we'll be coming at 5 p.m. With our team setting up. So we do not need everybody in the committee to help set up. I'm thinking what we usually need some support on is setting up the food table and the water, and some of our tripods. So to just get a sense of who'd be available to come early. Again, the event starts at 6, so this would be an hour before. Is anyone available to help set up?
Yeah, I would likely be available.
I can probably help out if you need it.
Yes. Great.
Sarah, I can help too.
I'd be able to help also. Sorry.
I might be able to come with Dave.
I can come as well, and I can stay late to help break down.
Excellent, thank you. Great. Anybody else that can stay after? It usually takes about a half an hour.
I can stay to help clean up.
Awesome. Great.
I'll be there, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay as well.
Great.
This is Doreen, so am I. I'm usually the last one out the door at things like this, so count me in.
I love it. Cool. And Fiona gave a update on the food, which is fantastic. Any comment on that? Food, drinks, utensils?
So pizza's all set. Pepperoni Express, they're wonderful and said that they were going to do the whole thing, which is remarkable. We got our permit, so that is all set. I worked with Board of Health on that. All that documentation is fine. I know that Brian has so kindly reached out to Stop and Shop and was chatting with them. I was thinking that we could utilize them for the waters and, you know, maybe salads or things like that. Brian, I don't know if you were able to hear back from them at all.
I was in touch with Matt just the other day, and he said he did receive your email, so I re-forwarded it. And,
Oh, okay.
so he's all set with that. I think he committed $50 in terms of our, you know, the amount of money that they would give us to do this.
Awesome.
On behalf of Stop and Shop?
Stop and Shop, yeah.
Okay, so we'll add their name and Pepperoni Express to our sponsor board. Cool. And that's chips, salad, waters, utensils?
Yeah, and utensils. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you so much.
In the planning department, you know, we have our P card, as I mentioned, so we can do some of the, like if we, you know, if the waters and the salads and those types of things that take up most of the Stop and Shop budget, then we can supply the chips or whatever.
Excellent. Cool. Okay, and the last thing we have here is facilitation, the fun stuff. So as I mentioned, we'll have a lot of people coming from our planning agency. So there will be somebody there to facilitate and somebody there to take notes at every table. So if you're interested in being a facilitator, you don't have to have experience in it. If it's just something that you're interested in talking about with people, or if it is something you have experience in, you just think it'd be a fun table. We're looking for at least one person from the working group to be at all of our tables. And I went over what the tables will be more in depth last month. The only change is we added a second transportation table. And this is a fun little Grafton special. For those of you who aren't familiar with CMRPC, we have two departments. Elena and I are more in the community development side, but we also have a transportation department that works directly with MassDOT. And they have agreed to come and do a table on mobility hubs, which would be an opportunity to add more multimodal spaces in Grafton. Could be a bus shelter, a bike rack, just more benches. There's a lot of different ways it could look, and it'd be more of like a visioning kind of design table. So that was the only change from last month. We're very excited to have them join us, and we'll keep our sidewalks table for the other side of transportation. So we're looking for signups. I'll go through the tables. And if you're not interested in being at one specific table, you could also sign up to be a floater. Just somebody who we can count on being there, that you don't really have to worry about being at a certain location. So housing first.
That's one of several topics I'm particularly interested in. So I would at least be a candidate to cover that.
Okay.
There may be others who would be even more, more suited for it, however.
And Sarah, this is Doreen. I feel the same way. I'm happy to take any gaps where we need it, or I'll be a floater, but I have experience doing this and happy to help it wherever I'm needed here.
Okay.
Yeah, same here for me. I mean, you just put me where you want me. It's fine.
And that's Brian. Okay. So I'll put you as floaters now, and if we have gaps, we could add all of you back in.
Yeah, I have a question. One thing that I see kind of missing from this a little bit, sidewalks are one thing, but I think the idea of the whole infrastructure of our roads and, everything that it needs to be, it's not just sidewalks, it's, we have dams, we have all kinds of things in town that are, this weather has certainly shown that we have to be a little more heads up than we have been. And I wonder if sidewalks needs to be expanded as, you know, the pedestrian and vehicle infrastructure to some extent. I just find that's just a little too limiting. I don't see where we're dealing with the infrastructure at all.
So Linda, great point. That we're trying to be as comprehensive as possible with the workshop, and the table where we're going to attempt to include as much as possible is the transportation table that deals with mobility hubs.
Okay.
So mobility hubs, of course, are not just about the nodes where these will be located, but it's about the entire system of roads and alternatives to car transportation, transit, and so forth. It doesn't deal with, other types of infrastructure, culverts, and town services, but in terms of roads, it will be an opportunity to do that.
We're particularly aware of some of the problems with culverts and the sort of the failures that have happened with sort of ignoring things, because the Robins and my husband and I live on George Hill Road, the notorious George Hill Road. And it not just George Hill Road, but Stowe Road, where they had to spend a substantial amount of time and money to rebuild the whole area down there, the drainage from George Hill down behind houses and stuff. And that's not even public transit, walking and biking. That's actually the entire infrastructure, sort of how the town works a bit more. And I guess I'm not seeing where that fits in as well as I'd like to see it, because we do have dams and we do have some areas that have some problems and potential problems. And I just don't know. I know it comes under the our not planning, no, not you people, but the town government to really be aware of those things. But people do see things, and I think we do need to kind of prod people to see what they've observed. I mean, everybody knows now that George Hill Road is washing out. That's not any great surprise. But I don't think they realized what was happening on Stowe Road, where that culvert was really, really in danger. And I think that somehow we're just not covering that completely in what I see here, but we'll see how it goes. And yes, I'm more than willing to be a floater.
Thank you, Linda. No, you're absolutely correct. And, we try to address some of those topics in the municipal vulnerability plan. It is old by now. It's from 2018. And, you have a point. So we will certainly address these issues in the master plan, in plan development. But we'll, we're trying to be a little bit, we're trying to have a good amount of tables, but not too many. And that was the limitation here. But by all means, we will address this in the plan. Thank you for your point. And Sue has a question as well.
I just wanted to ask if Linda had brought up dams. I don't know how we can work that into master plan when a lot of those dams are owned by the state. They're the ones responsible for them and not the town. So how do we work that into a master plan? Just encourage, I mean, the state will work at its own pace.
Some of them are private.
Some of them are, but we don't, I don't know how much responsibility we can put forward to that.
But the DPW should have some idea.
Oh, they would have some idea, but I'm just saying, if it's owned by the state to do the work, or if it's owned privately to do the work, I don't know if we put it in the master plan, how we're going to reach that goal if they choose not to do anything about it.
If there's a town road crossing it, it belongs to the town.
I don't know. Is
the
it?
culvert on Stowe Road was ours.
Well, yes, but there are private dams and then there are other ones. Well, we can come to that later. I just was wondering how that's all going to work in.
Yeah, I think, we'll want to address the topic at least to some extent in the plan, but yeah, the master plan is gonna have to acknowledge that, yeah, these are things the town can do, and these are things the town can't do. So,
Thank you. Thank you for your point. I want to
Chantel?
make sure Chantel has an opportunity to ask us a questions too. Chantel, you have your hand up.
Yep. With regards specifically to the workshop, a little bit to Linda's point, I'm wondering if we have a formal method of capturing feedback from attendees that maybe didn't specifically fit into one of the categories of the tables that they visited, and they said, hey, you know, I really kind of had, you know, this on my mind, but there wasn't really an opportunity to talk about it. How do we collect that feedback as well?
That's a great point. We will have an anonymous comment box at the door to leave if somebody wants to say something to the box. But I think that's also a great role for the floaters and for us at the check-in table as well. And I thank you for bringing this up because I added researchers to this role here. Something Elena and I really want to express as part of this role is to write down as much as you can from what people tell you, whether or not it's about the activity or just something about Grafton. We want to make sure as much data from this event is captured, which is why it'll be so helpful to have you all at the tables. Anybody interested in economic development? We know Mr. Allen will be there.
I can work that table.
Cool, thank you. Sidewalks.
Sarah, I'm sorry, I'm interested in economic development as well, specifically
Perfect.
as it relates to this list. Just full transparency, my work schedule sometimes is variable like week of. So I would love to be part of that. And I should know within, 10 or 14 days of it if I'm going to be able to attend.
Cool, thank you. I'll put you down, and if you have work, we'll have Sue cover and base. Thank you. Sidewalks.
I'd be specifically interested in this one, but I'll just throw out there that I'm happy to help anywhere I am needed. So if someone else was really hot for sidewalks, I'm happy to hand it off and do something else.
Thank you.
Chances are, based on past experience, we may get a lot of people wanting to talk about sidewalks because people talk about sidewalks at just about every town meeting I've ever been at.
That'll be the value add.
It's a topic of considerable interest over the years.
Mobility hubs. So this will be nodes and also, as Elena mentioned, traffic in general. Andrea, did you want to be at this transportation table? Would that make sense? The mobility hubs table for you?
No, I was just kind of adding to what the earlier comment was, but I'm fine doing any table, so you can put me there. Are you going to talk about what you want us to do at these tables? I mean, we're there to listen, not give them our feedback or what we think, right? I mean, it's more just collecting their ideas. So it doesn't take somebody being an expert in one of these areas. You just sit and listen and write it down. Or are they going to have stickers? Do they get to vote on? Some of these things have free stickers and
each table will have a different activity. So for instance, for housing, there will be a 3x4 foot poster with areas in town for housing on the x-axis on the top and types of housing on the y-axis, and people will be putting stickers on which types of housing they'd like to see in different locations as an example of what an activity could be. But every table will be a little bit different.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Put me wherever there's. If nobody wants that, I'll do that one.
Natural cultural resources will be more of a historical preservation lens for this table.
Yeah, I'm happy to stand in for that one.
That's Victoria?
That's right.
Thank you.
I am as well.
Cool, thank you.
Or anywhere, but that one sounds good.
Awesome. Open space and rec, we'll be talking about trails, and I said water attractions. That's like Silver Lake, Blackstone River, water access.
I'd be happy to do that.
Cool.
I just thought of something with that. We really need to be able to make sure we contact and invite the Grafton Land Trust.
Yeah.
They're people who really are involved with this and own a lot of land and control a lot of hiking and trails, and they're really into it.
Can
So-
anyone,
I'm trying to-
Linda, would you like to reach out to them?
Yeah, get contacting them. I know some of the members, sure.
Thank you. Quality of life, this is going to be crowdsourcing Grafton Support Network and community. So organizations, group hobbies, clubs. Would be a fun one.
Sarah, you know you can plug me wherever you want, but
Okay.
but
I
yeah, I
hadn't-
mean, I know obviously the working group should have an opportunity to weigh in, but if we do have any holes or, you know, I didn't know if you envision staff like floating more or
I
not.
have a vision of you at the check-in table.
You want me at the check-in table?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, yeah, will do.
thank you.
If,
Anybody ever-
if no one else would like the quality of life, I'm happy to move from natural cultural resources to quality of life as Julie G has already graciously agreed to do that one.
Thank you. And our last one is visioning. So this will be crowdsourcing words and themes and values to write the next vision statement.
Sounds
Sarah,
fun
it's
too.
JC. I mean, I'm interested in that one again too. I think that's what we're all doing here. So you're welcome to put me down for that, and Sue and I can probably divide and conquer.
Awesome. And then we have another fun one. We do not necessarily need a working group member here, but if anybody would much rather talk to all the kids at the event than the adults, we have a kids table, and they will also have an activity, What Do You Love About Grafton, for coloring or writing. That's okay. That's okay. Cool. And then we'll have Doreen, Dave, Brian, Linda as floaters, or if a specific table calls to you, feel free to come on in. Anybody else at the meeting today that is planning on being there that's not on the list already?
I will do the housing if there's nobody, doesn't look like anybody signed up for it, so. do that.
Great. Thank you.
Sarah, I planned on attending and I can go wherever is needed as this town staff. So wherever.
Sorry, you might be at the rec table.
I was gonna throw my name in the hat for the job relatedness, so that's fine.
Thank you.
And this is Julie C. It's on my calendar, but my work schedule changes. So if I'm there, I'm happy to help out at the kids' table.
Hey, awesome. Cool.
Yeah, hi, it's Justin. I actually am not going to be able to. I'm going to be out of town. So sorry.
No worries. We'll miss you.
I mean, Julie, I think you did honestly get the best table. So
Okay. Cool. That's all I had. Thank you so much, everybody. Again, all the flyers.
was a good
fact sheets
question.
Was that? Oh, sorry.
I was just looking, sorry, I just saw someone's question and I was talking to myself. I forgot I wasn't on mute.
No worries.
No,
So
but
all-
they asked if someone's interested in traffic, what table would they go to? That's what Andrea just asked.
Yeah. We stuck her at the transportation table.
Yeah, no, I know. And is that what, if people are interested in traffic, would they go to the transportation table? Is that?
Absolutely.
We won't be addressing traffic directly. We, that used to be our approach, but we want to get more complex information this time about not just traffic and problems, but also opportunities for different modes of transportation. So traffic will be included in that, but not, it won't be the central topic.
And I'll add, we do have data on the most congested areas of Grafton and the most dangerous roads and intersections of Grafton from the survey. So that was open-ended, and folks wrote whatever their answers were during that process. Chantal?
I also just wanted to make sure I understood correctly that the idea is to have everyone flow through all the tables. Like obviously we're working a particular table, but the idea is that the attendees would flow through all of the tables.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Mhm. So just to wrap up, we have all of these promotional materials, and I'll be sending everybody the email that you could forward or send to whoever you'd like tomorrow. But I think the big takeaway for everybody is to push the Facebook event, to push the flyer, to push everybody you know who's lived, worked, played, hung out in Grafton, that has a stake in the town. I think we could really make this a really special event. So thank you everybody for signing up, and I'll hand it over to Elena.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Sarah, if you could bring up the tables again. We just have some additional, we have some questions related to the table activities that we would like to ask you. And thank you all for signing up for facilitation responsibilities. We really appreciate it, and we need your expertise. You know Grafton best. You know the needs the town has. So we absolutely appreciate it. And I would like to add that, as we develop the plan, we are looking for two types of data, quantitative data, which we're grateful for your input so far and what we were able to get from census, but we're looking for not just quantitative, we're looking for qualitative data. And we think the workshop is a great opportunity for that kind of information. So as you have conversations with residents, I'm sure, they will convey not only needs and issues and opportunities, but also stories about local businesses and so on. So if you could capture that kind of information, and if it's quotable, even better. This is the type of data, quote unquote, qualitative data that we want to include in the plan as we write the chapters. So that's one thing we're trying to be better and more diligent about in these workshops, is take better notes and try to capture some of that. And in the interest of time, I just have, we have some quick questions for you. So they're all related to the tables. And I did promise I would talk about visioning. So the visioning table, visioning exercise will essentially be an exercise crowdsourcing keywords that we as a working group will take after the workshop, and we'll look at preferences for those words. We will suggest a set of keywords, and we'll have residents propose some of those keywords, and we'll develop the vision statement during future working group sessions. And with that, we'll develop the goals and strategy articulation. Moving on to the economic development table. So what we are considering for the economic development, and Sarah, sorry to put you on the spot, if you have that map, we wanted to get your thoughts, and you can give us your thoughts right now, or you can email your thoughts on the specific locations of economic development / commercial corridors. What we're trying to achieve with this workshop activity is to understand what would be needed interventions in these areas to create commercial nodes in town. So Worcester Street would be one obvious choice, where we are trying we're trying to zoom in these areas. Fisherville, Worcester Street, the Science Park in the north. And we'll be workshopping a list of interventions that might be appropriate for this area. So for example, the Worcester Street area would look at things like, are there appropriate setbacks to foster the type of commercial activity that this area might benefit from? So are the dimensional requirements appropriate? Are these parcels utilized appropriately, or are they underutilized? Are there some preferred uses in this area? In Science Park, for example, would industrial uses be more appropriate? rather than small business commercial type of activities, which would be in Worcester Street. Are these areas connecting with each other? For example, is the Grafton Common connecting in a useful way with the commercial node on Worcester Street? Fisherville, are there any interventions that could help that area become a commercial hub? Does it have the density needed to support commercial activity? Would Worcester Street be appropriate for becoming an 18-hour district? Something that doesn't close at night, restaurants that would be open for lunch. Again, does density support those types of uses? So these will be the types of questions we're trying to ask of these areas, but we really wanted to vet with a committee whether we have these locations. We've identified the priority locations, and if you have other suggestions.
And
Yeah, hi, it's Justin chiming in. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, hi. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, and I think that this master plan is an opportunity to go much, much bolder. The kind of questions you're talking about, I mean, these are really small tinkers, and certainly I would support, you know, these kinds of adjustments. But, you know, we're talking about a master plan that's going to take us decades into the future and maybe a lot longer, you know, depending on the next time the town gets its act together. And we're expected to have a lot of new growth. So how is that new growth going to be accommodated? And to suggest that it's just going to be accommodated in the existing nodes, I think is unrealistic. Fiona and I spoke about this, and I'm of the mind that we use this master planning process to think bold and think big about what does it mean for like a built-out Grafton to look like. How do we make sure we preserve the kind of open space, agricultural activities, while also accommodating a lot of new growth? And what kind of growth do we want it to look like? Do we want it to be continued low density sprawl, or do we want more of these kinds of high density nodes that you're kind of talking about, but in other parts of the town that don't exist currently?
So for context on how these top 5 were chosen, this is from the survey. So we asked the question, what areas of Grafton do you think are commercial corridors that could use improvements? And these were the top 5 options. So that's how we got there. It's not really based on existing conditions or zoning, but I think the question tonight is, you know, if we got these areas right, these borders, is there something we're missing from the community knowledge side?
Yeah, and I
Well,
absolutely.
that's what I just said. You are missing something.
Yeah, this is a great point. And in the master plan, again, as we develop the chapters, this would be a great topic to address. We have to operate of both scales, both the scale of the city and the scale of the corridor, in order for these to come together as a whole. So because the workshop is somewhat limiting, we chose to focus at the scale of these nodes. But I can see how these would be very useful questions to ask of the public, by all means. And again, we'll be including this in the plan because we are looking 20 years into the future.
Yeah, I think, yeah, the observation here is that these areas that are highlighted are largely the existing business corridors in Grafton, and it's we're kind of unusual in the shape and distribution of our business areas, but yeah, these are largely the existing business areas, and it's well worth getting a sense of what more we could do within these existing areas, and then what we could do could be something more than a few tweaks. We could sort of rethink the style of businesses, rethink the concentration of businesses, whatever. But we also, to Justin's point, I think it's well worth thinking about, and we can probably, while the workshop may focus largely on these areas, we could ask our workshop attendees to think bigger. How might Grafton reshape or expand our areas for development of business. Because one of the things I've heard more than once over in recent years is there's, you know, when someone wants to come in and locate a business in Grafton, there's just not much available space for it. So there seems to be a need for expanding the economic development areas, for expanding the opportunities for commercial development. Don't know how much of that we can get out of the workshop, but it's certainly something that is well worth looking at as we move forward with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Dave, I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
go ahead.
I couldn't agree more. I think that when we look at this map, if we take existing nodes, and I love Justin's point because I think the same way, right? What does it look like in 30 years? But if we think about the 10 to 15 year timeline, you know, elite towns that develop economically effectively draw from outside of the community. So I look at this map and it's pretty obvious. The North Grafton areas around Tufts and in the North Grafton community can pull from Shrewsbury. That's a dense, developing community with population that's increasing. We want to draw commercial activity from outside of Grafton. We only have 17 to 20,000 residents, so we need to draw from outside. You have to consider proximity. So those are also areas where something as obvious as the ability to create parking exists. I look at Worcester Street, there's not a lot of opportunity to do that. That's the biggest problem that we have in town center. There's nowhere to put parking. So if I'm a restaurateur looking at Grafton from the outside, knowing that the median sales price is increasing, which means that income is going up, which means that I have a disposable community I can go after, I'm not going to go somewhere where people can't park their car. So I need to consider that as an opportunity to draw residents from Shrewsbury, to draw them from the east side of Worcester, to bring people from Westboro into Grafton. I thought it was one of the biggest reasons that when very recently, a lot of us were heavily engaged in both the George Hill Road project and the Holden Farm Initiative, which wasn't the Holden Farm Initiative, but it was. To me, living in the north side of Grafton, that was an opportunity to stop residents from leaving Grafton and going to Westboro. That's the last stop. That's the last commercial exit on the way out of town was Holden Farm before you got into Bay State Commons in Westboro. I want to keep the tax revenue here. So I look at the north side of town, I say there's parking opportunity if we develop, and there's restaurant opportunity if we develop. It doesn't exist as much in Grafton Center because the geography doesn't support it. So those are the kind of things I think we should be considering when we consider the holistic opportunity of the town. How do we pull from Shrewsbury? That's our best opportunity.
Yeah, let me just make a quick
point, JT. This is Brian. I was going to say this is how intermodal may work into your ideas, because we really all we have are cars, right? And we plan on parking lots everywhere. That isn't necessarily the future. So with regards to how we get to these businesses, or who can set up a business, whether it be a restaurant or a commercial business of some kind, really will depend upon transportation. And, you know, and that part of that is getting people to and from wherever they want to be. And the intermodal combines multiple types of transportation, whether it be bike, car, rail, bus, whatever you name it, whatever is most possible for that area. So I think bringing that into the conversation and talking about that may address some of your questions with regards to, you know, where are we going and how can we have this type of expansion.
Yeah, one more point.
Yeah, I don't
dwell on this too much.
I don't disagree. I don't think we're getting a high-speed rail in Grafton in the next 50 years. So I think we have to consider leveraging road infrastructure, whether it's buses, bikes, car. If we're going to draw business into town, it's going to have to be people driving. In the next 50 years, even during most of our lifetimes and into most of our children's adulthood, I don't think there's going to be a massive increase in rail in our town. And so we have to leverage what people have now that we know is also going to be effective in the future. And parking is a massive piece of that in our town, and we've got a big problem with it.
Rail is only one part of intermodal, so you're right.
Yeah, it's certainly worth. I mean, you know, with some of the work we've done recently in planning board with respect to, you know, looking at parking requirements and projects around there. There's ties into with other discussions as well. Yeah, we are pretty much a a very heavily car dependent town. It's just due to the nature of the way we're laid out. It's well worth thinking about how we can make that change. To Brian's point, I think it's well worth it's worth thinking about long term. What are the opportunities to make some sort of changes there? The other point I just want to briefly mention when we're talking about economic development here is that right now about 11% of the land area in Grafton is zoned commercial. That's pretty small by comparison, certainly with other towns. But that's how we're zoned, and of course, actual land use doesn't exactly match the zoning. I don't want to get into that now. But I think there is a point to be made that we need to think about expanding commercial opportunities here in some way. And I guess I don't need to say anything more right now. This is for the workshop. This is probably a good place, sort of a starting point for thinking and discussion.
I think this is a great discussion, and thank you all for your points. We will certainly continue this conversation in future working group meetings. But I wanted to note that we will be integrating your points in the activity. Parking is part of the interventions. We are going to list possible interventions into these commercial corridors. Addressing dimensional requirements, where parking goes. Should parking be at the front of the street, or should there be a street frontage? Should parking be in the back? So all of these are interventions that could potentially develop these commercial areas into hubs that will attract shoppers from other towns and residents from other towns. Utilizing these areas highest and best use, so to speak. Some of these parcels are currently not. So it is about expansion. It is about balancing that pressure from residential on commercial areas, but it's also about infill development. So how to best use these corridors with their potential.
Hi, can I just jump in again, please? It's Justin. So I guess when I think about displaying these kinds of maps, I feel like it's just too timid. I feel like when that's what you show, you essentially communicate this message that these are the areas that we're going to just focus all new development on, and it's frankly naive. We all know that there's going to be development that's going to happen all over the town. One of the things that we went through in this town was we identified, the planning department identified all very large lots. What was it, Fiona? It was over 17 acres? Something like that. So we know every single parcel in the town that's over 17 acres. So show a map of that and say, well, any of these parcels at any moment could turn into, 30 single family homes spread out in the cul-de-sac. So show the vision. What could it be instead? Maybe one of them could look like Grafton Center. Maybe one of them can look like Fisherville neighborhood. So show them a vision of high density, mixed use development with pedestrian amenities and links to the WRTA all over town, 3 or 4 of them. And where should they be? Big picture, bold, not like little teeny things. People don't care about those kinds of details. You're kind of like forcing them to care. They want to think big.
I think people care about both. And, to your point, I think this is a great suggestion. Maybe we know there is a need for light industrial. We know there is residential development pressure on, for example, distribution centers, parcels that could become distribution centers. So it's not just about commercial, it's about light industrial as well. So maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and take your suggestion into account. These are certainly things we were going to address in the master plan. But when you talk about a commercial corridor, you have to go pedestrian scale. You have to. Otherwise, the discussion remains general. Dimensional requirements are never addressed. People do care about these things, and they also care about, their tax burden and having more commercial and industrial development. So we'll take your suggestion into account, and maybe we create an additional table or an additional activity, but point well taken.
Thank you.
And connected to this, Chantel, sorry, you had a question.
No, it's fine. Let's move on.
Sure.
So-
I would be mindful of everyone's time. We wanted to vet some of these choices by you, and we appreciate your suggestions. So we touched on the mobility nodes, and we completely we agree this is a car-dependent community. But are there any opportunities to introduce these mobility nodes? And the locations we're thinking of are where the MBTA station is, around the MBTA station is, or around the common. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to vet with the public the idea of a pilot project for a mobility node or two, where it's not about eliminating cars, but it's about residents having an opportunity to change modes of transportation. So it's about transferring from one mode of transportation to the other. And this goes hand in hand with economic development. These are interrelated topics, but as a pilot exercise, we think it could be useful. So we wanted to get some feedback from you on potential locations. Of course, MBTA is a natural choice because of the rail. The common was the second, but if you have any suggestions, let us know.
Fisherville, South Grafton, sorry. I know I shouldn't be, I should probably be taking a back seat in the working group, but just wanted to make sure that that's included.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm a Southeast, so I'm with you, Fiona.
Agreed.
And how do we connect the neighborhoods together? I mean, that's a big part of being a community, right? And around here, you can't even walk down the street in some places because the traffic is just too hard to do that. You can't visit your neighbors.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that looking at the WRTA Route B, how it does go from the MBTA station, through North Grafton, through the Common, and into South Grafton. I mean, that I think is the basic building blocks for those mobility nodes you're talking about. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. And in these mobility nodes, you would have also bike sharing, car sharing, and we know the Grafton bike network is not where it needs to be, but this is looking years into the future. This would be the beginning of such a network. And we know Grafton has a population base that might use bicycle infrastructure. Sue, I'm sorry, go ahead. You had a question.
Well, I think the discussion is very interesting, but I think we're getting a little off track. I think the whole purpose of our workshops is that we are to gather information and not put our opinions on people as they come to our table. I think once we gather all of that, then I think we have an opportunity as a committee to sit down and express what our opinions are and what we can gather from this and make it useful. We want them to give us the knowledge so we know what they really want and how they want the town to develop. And so by sitting there and giving them, I think we should do this, I think we should do that, that's not giving me any information. So that's my 2 cents.
So I think what we want from the workshop is to ask residents what modes of transportation will they be using. So we think that would be a more useful topic to workshop rather than location. Because once you set a location, people start to envision the possibilities in a setting. If we were to workshop the locations, I think that would be a little bit more difficult. So again, we have to make some selection choices because of the limitation of this 2-hour workshop, but your point is well taken. And if there are no other questions, one other thing we wanted to ask your opinion on is housing. So location for housing. We'll have a visual survey, and if Sarah, if you could, that map, thank you. We'll have a visual survey asking participants to think of where specific types of housing would be most appropriate. And what we've identified on the map is South Grafton, the area around the MBTA station, Upton Street, and Providence Road as potential locations that, again, these came out of the survey, and we're trying to understand, what type of housing could exist in this area. David Robbins had image of where housing density is located, and this pretty much corresponds with these corridors. But we also want to see what type of housing residents would like to see there. Have we missed any locations where desired development should happen? Do you have any suggestions?
What about hotels, motel, anything like that for town? And possible location would be up near Wyman Gordon.
Thank you for that. That actually would be very useful for our economic development table. So more in the commercial development rather than housing development.
That's fine, yeah, I believe.
Yeah, hi, it's Justin. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to suggest that you could look at housing in some of the economic development areas, particularly areas where you're considering putting restaurants like Worcester Street and some of the other streets. There is a trend towards a higher density. Obviously, they wouldn't be single family homes, but there's a lot of housing going over retail and small business these days. And so I think you could consider some of the economic development areas for housing as well. And it goes back to some of the suggestions about village types of mixes with economic development and housing.
Yeah, so I was actually going to say the same thing. I really object to you guys framing it like this, to have like these kind of separate commercial housing. I mean, look at the development pattern in this town. Most of the built up areas are mixed use. And, I think we want to kind of celebrate that path, and we want to promote future development that is also mixed. So yeah, so there can be light industrial mixed in with commercial, mixed in with housing. That's how Grafton has developed in the past, and that's how I would like to see it develop in the future. So this exercise of separating them out doesn't seem to be really helpful.
We actually are including mixed use as a type of housing. And to your point, we're not separating them out. This is these chapters are a state mandate. So by default, we have to address housing as a standalone topic.
Well, not in the community outreach, you don't have to.
In the data collection, we do. But of course, we try to connect them because we understand these are interdependent in many ways. So if you have a suggestion for how we could address this, let us know.
On the map,
Yeah,
do you
can I
have
ask-
the mixed use housing? Don't we have zones for mixed use? Don't we have 3 or 4 in the town? Are they can they maybe be also shown on the map with these corridors, or are they in these already highlighted areas? Do you know?
We do. So there is a zoning map, and the master plan, again, looking years into the future, is trying to understand what zoning changes could happen that respond to community needs for housing location, for commercial development, for industrial development. So we thought about starting with that map, but then we decided to go to the survey preferences to locate these, because what we're ultimately trying to do is to understand what zoning changes might be appropriate, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I think with
Could I
respect
pose
with respect to mixed use, we have, just in the last 10 years or so, we've established a few mostly modest sized mixed use zones where the idea is to encourage the mix of commercial and residential. We've not seen a lot of development along those lines as of yet, but that doesn't mean that 10 years is really not a lot of time, particularly when the area is already fairly well developed and we rezoned it to sort of encourage some redevelopment. That's going to take time. And there have been various factors involved that tend to slow it down. But if anything, looking long-term ahead, I would certainly be interested in expanding our notion of mixed-use zoning to as many places as it might make sense. In a lot of cases, the types of business areas that we currently have, I think many of them probably would lend themselves quite well to mixed use. So that's certainly, and to some extent, the yellow areas on this map, well, not entirely, but some of them sort of line up with that. But they also just sort of, follow a couple of major roads, and that seems to be suitable for thinking about where to locate denser types of housing, whether it's mixed use or multifamily. And I don't know that I would limit my consideration to these areas.
Yeah, there's already a lot of multifamilies there too already, right? Like
yes.
along the corridors.
Yeah, so it's this is kind of a tough topic from my point of view, at least, to think about and to try to identify where the different kinds of housing really we'd like to see them develop long term. And the largest portion of Grafton, something like 85% or so of Grafton is currently zoned for single family residential development. And we filled up a lot of that, but it's not full yet, but we filled up a lot of that already. And the question, sort of a key question in my mind, is in what direction do we want Grafton to direct future housing development? And that really runs the gamut from through all different types and styles of housing. And it's kind of hard to pin that down to any one area of Grafton. But I think, as you said, Elena, this map sort of responds to what people have told us in surveys, which is, kind of a good starting point. We need to be thinking beyond just what people have told us in surveys, because we also want, at least I think, we also want residents at some point during the development of this master plan. This is probably not quite the right place. It's more of a starting point, but we want people we want to think about what are some new opportunities that maybe none of us have thought of before. How can we rethink the direction of housing development here? And that's a complicated topic. It's not something that you're going to really make a lot of headway in any one workshop.
It is a complex topic. I think what we're trying to achieve with this exercise, we know Grafton is not a town that is struggling to attract developers. So this isn't a situation where this is a situation where the town could dictate where development happens, because the market supports these type of criteria. Developers will come to Grafton, and we're also cognizant that much of the single family residential expansion has encroached in open space, put pressure on light industrial uses and so on. So ultimately, that is the goal of this exercise, to see what locations would be the best opportunities for either infill development or denser type of housing, getting away from that single family type of housing, which again, the market supports.
Could I ask a question about a couple of the denser areas of this particular map that you have up? So we have a very dense area to the north, a very dense area to the south. Just because I'm novice to this, how much cooperation goes on with Shrewsbury and Sutton in this particular instance as to what goes on in those areas?
I think when it comes to transportation, there is cooperation, but when it comes to housing, this is truly standalone town policy.
Yeah,
Is there a reason that we couldn't? And I understand that, but you know, the line from Boston is being pushed significantly, and we have our own town and we have our own borders, but the cooperation between towns is going to become more and more important to kind of, we're extremely interdependent now. I would love to Justin's point earlier, as we think about 20 years down the road and what it looks like to be sustainable, I would love to see a cooperation between, you know, a Shrewsbury and a Grafton, a Sutton and a Grafton on these borders as to how these geographies are defined, because the lines are going to be more and more blurred, right? The tax base is what it is, but I think that's critically important. If we're not cooperating with the interdependent towns that are just on the other side of the line and making these areas attractive to residents, to pull residents from Shrewsbury into Grafton, to pull residents from Sutton into Grafton, I think we don't want to operate in silos, right? And I think that, and again, looking at this map right now, it's extremely concentrated on the line between towns. And Shrewsbury's got double our population. I mentioned this earlier in the meeting, but that's where a lot of our opportunity to pull business comes from, is from that particular community. And the same can probably be said for Sutton on the southern edge of the town. I'm not as familiar with that geography, but I imagine it holds water. So if we're going to look at these areas and say, well, what are we going to do with this? Well, what would that mean to Shrewsbury? What would that mean to Sutton? And how would that positively impact us? We should be considering that long term.
Thank you. Thanks for your point.
So Elena, I just want to make sure that we're staying on track because we're getting to 8:45 now, and I just want to make sure that we're getting all the points that we need to, but also keep going. But I know that Chantel and Colleen both have their hands up, but maybe we can start moving on to the next items. Let's make sure that we cover everything.
No, that was basically my comment, was that like it's really hard to avoid getting sucked into like going deep on these topics because we're all very passionate about the project and want to go. But I think we really need to focus on what we want to get out of the workshop specifically, and trust that we'll have time to have all of these deep conversations in future meetings.
Yeah, I think that's well said. We have, you know, a lot that we're going to be wanting to work with, but you know, here we're trying to prepare for the workshop. And what are we going to do? Is there anything more that we need to say about this housing corridor map right now? I mean, we know that it's a much broader topic, and you know, this is going to do not much more than scratching the surface.
It really is an exercise in simplification so that we can narrow it down to a topic. But all of you brought up really great points that we look forward to discussing in future working group meetings. So I think the only thing we wanted to ask is whether these locations seem like viable options, or if you have any other suggestions for locations.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the discussion at the workshop is not going to be limited solely to these highlighted areas, that folks will have an opportunity to express opinions about well, let's think about this, let's think about that, let's, if we're not limited to just these highlighted areas, in terms of getting folks in the workshop to give us their thoughts, I think that would be, it's okay to highlight these areas, I guess, but want to make sure that we can have discussions in the workshop that extend beyond these areas.
Yeah, we could also broaden what we've done in the past is we had a housing typology survey opened up to the entire town, so to speak. But it tends to be a little bit more general and less useful. So specificity in this case might help, but maybe we add an option for housing typology choices for their choice location.
So let's see what we can get out of this, and then we can go beyond. We can see what we get out of this that will help us decide, where to go next with the housing questions.
Can I suggest that it's a two-tiered approach where we give them a map of the town and have them highlight the areas where they think it's appropriate, and then give them this highlight map of the town, and given their kind of naked choice, ask them to assess these choices and see if that changes their perspective, sort of the sliding scale quantitation methodology.
Right, thank you.
So what's next here?
Last topic. So we'll have a natural and cultural resources table. We are going to ask residents to think of issues and opportunities. So this would be kind of a classic exercise that we do. But one thing we really do want to get out of this is think not just of individual resources, but actually connections between historic resources and natural resources, because ultimately the goal is to establish corridors between historic districts, linking them via streetscapes or heritage trail systems or signage. Blackstone National Heritage Corridor comes to mind. So that was another thing that we wanted to ask the working group about. And if you have suggestions, please email them to us as we put this table together. What would be some important sites that would be good to connect? Scenic byways, so resources, historic and natural resources. If you can't think of some right now, please send them to Fiona or us by email. But that was our last question to the group.
Yeah, it's Justin. We have quite a lot of really meaningful Native American heritage sites throughout the town. There's the reservation itself, the archaeological site. There's this trail that's like near like Leland Street, cemeteries. So those would all be really great to highlight on a map to see if people knew of other ones.
Thank you, Justin. If there are no other suggestions, again, please send them to us by email. We'll be trying to highlight some of these resources and think of ways of connecting them. That's basically the gist of this activity. Thank you all for a productive conversation. These are all the questions we have. And thank you for volunteering for the tables.
Awesome. Thank you, CMRPC team, for that discussion. This was extremely helpful, and for all the Master Plan Working Group members for stepping up. It's a group effort. We're very, very excited for our workshop. You will be hearing from me, of course, as you always are. But I just wanted to say a thank you from the planning department. We really appreciate everyone's effort here, and we know that it's we're asking, a good chunk of your time, and we just appreciate it. And one thing that I did want to say, Elena, just a comment, I know that I'm trying not to interject every 5 minutes because it's really supposed to be the working group that contribute, but we are doing a parcel prioritization project for open space with CMRPC team members as well. So I'll make sure to get you some data that we've been working on for that, and that'll help answer some questions that you have from the last prompt. But thank you all very much, and I will turn it over to Dave to close us out.
Yeah. Well, I can tell we're going to have some very enthusiastic discussions going forward, and we're just barely getting started. And looking forward to what we hear out of the workshop, and what the folks at CMRPC can take from that, and get to work on writing plans and us working, and we'll have a lot of good discussions. So thank you all for participating. And this being the end of our meeting agenda, I think the chair would recognize a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded that this meeting be adjourned. We'll formally take this by a roll call vote. Fiona, can you call the roll?
Yes, absolutely. 1 second. Let me pull up my other list. Okay. Doreen DeFazio.
Fazio, aye.
Justin Hollander. Sue Robbins.
Sue was muted.
Aye.
Lindsay Fox.
Aye.
Andrea Bresnan. Victoria Duckworth.
Aye.
Julie Capuzziello.
Aye.
Chantel Kimball.
Aye.
Susan Duval. Julie Grace.
Aye.
Deborah George.
Aye.
Essex Petrie. JT Ross.
Aye.
Colleen Roy.
Aye.
Linda Hassinger.
Aye.
Dave Robbins.
Aye.
And Brian Huell for those who.
Aye.
Dave, do you want me to continue with the whole list? Those are all the folks that were present.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll declare the motion carried unanimously. We are adjourned for this evening.